There is a story in the Bible that has been told wrong for 2,000 years, not in what it says, in who it is about. You have heard the name Lazarus. You have been told it was a miracle, a dead man, 4 days in the tomb, called back by the voice of Jesus. And you have probably asked yourself the same question everyone asks. What happened to him after? Did he live a normal life? Did he die again? Was he afraid? Did he remember anything from the other side? These are the questions that hang in the air every time the story is read, and they are the wrong questions. Because the story is not about a man named Lazarus. It is about you, and it has been waiting for you to wake up. The conventional reading is beautiful. You have heard it in church, in sermons, in Easter plays. Lazarus was dead. Jesus wept. Jesus called him out. Lazarus emerged, still wrapped in burial cloth S, and everyone who saw it believed. It is one of the most emotionally powerful scenes in the entire gospel. The sheer drama of it, the tension, the tears, the voice of a man speaking into a tomb, the long pause, the staggering moment when the dead walk out. It is built like a masterpiece of narrative architecture. And it works. It has worked for 2,000 years. It makes you feel something. It makes you wonder. It makes you ask what you would do if you saw something like that. That reading is not wrong. But it is standing on the surface of something much deeper. And the surface is not where the real story lives. Here is the first crack. The Greek word used in John 11 for what Jesus did to Lazarus is not what you think it is. When Jesus stands outside the tomb and calls Lazarus out, the text does not use the word an ist eimi, which is the standard word for resurrection, for rising from the dead, for the body being restored from death to life. That word appears elsewhere. Paul uses it. The Gospels use it for Jesus himself. But for Lazarus, the word is egeiro, and egeiro does not mean what you have been told it means. Egeiro is a word that appears hundreds of times in the Greek New Testament, and in almost every single case, its primary meaning is not resurrection. Its primary meaning is to wake up, to arouse from sleep, to stir someone who is lying unconscious, to lift a person who has fallen. In its most literal form, it means to get out of bed. Pause on that. The word Jesus used to call Lazarus from the tomb is the same word you would use to wake a child in the morning. The same word a mother would use to arouse her son from a deep sleep, not resurrection. Awakening. Now watch what happens when you read the story again with that single piece of knowledge. Lazarus was not dead, he was sleeping, and not in the euphemistic sense that the Bible sometimes uses for death. She is not dead, she is sleeping, but in a literal, psychological, spiritual sense. The kind of sleep that looks like death to everyone on the outside. The kind of sleep where your body is still breathing, but your consciousness is gone. The kind of sleep where you are present but not aware, where you are moving but not awake. And this is where the story becomes about you. You know what this feels like. You have lived it. There have been years of your life where you were not really there, where you went through the motions, work, relationships, obligations, smiles, conversations, but something inside you was not present. You were awake in the biological sense, your eyes were open, your mouth moved. But the person that you knew yourself to be was somewhere else, anesthetized, ied under routine and obligation, and the slow erosion of meaning. That is not death, that is sleep. And the Bible calls it the tomb. Think about that for a moment. The tomb is not a physical cave in a Hills Ide in Beth, any. The tomb is the state of being alive without being present. It is the condition of existing without awareness. It is the place where you go when the world becomes too heavy and your consciousness contracts into a small, dark, safe room where nothing can reach you. And you have been there. You have been there for years. You have wrapped yourself in burial cloth, yes. The stories you tell yourself, the roles you play, the identities you cannot let go of. And you have been waiting for a voice to call you out. Now here's the part that changes everything. This is the kind of revelation that does not let you go back to the old way of reading. And that is exactly why you need to subscribe to this channel, because these are the threads we are pulling every single week, the original languages meeting the psychology of your actual life, and there is no telling what you will uncover next. Before you keep walking deeper into this tomb, I want you to pause and ask yourself, what word just landed in you? Was it egeiro? Was it the word autochombai? Was it the recognition that you have been sleeping? Type it in the comments. Leave the single word that hit you hardest. See what others write. And notice if the same words are striking everyone. The story of Lazarus is not about a man who died a biological death and was restored to biological life. That is the surface reading. That is what most people stop at. But the text is not a history report. It is a psychological map. It is a blueprint for the transformation of human consciousness. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Ege iro, to awaken, appears in John 11 at the most critical moment of the narrative. Jesus stands at the entrance of the tomb. He ips, he grow ons. He is deeply moved, and the Greek word used there is embi rima om ai, a word that means to snort with anger, to be agitated, to be furious. Why is Jesus angry? Because he is staring into the face of the thing that keeps humanity asleep. Not death, the illusion of death, the belief that the tomb is the end, the conviction that the story is over, the lie that says, you are your corpse. Jesus is not weeping because his friend died. He is weeping because everyone present believes that death is the final word. And that belief, that false conviction, is what keeps them in the tomb even while they are alive. You have felt this. You have been in a room full of people who were all walking dead. You have sat at a dinner table with people whose eyes were open but whose souls were gone. You have been that person yourself, and you knew something was wrong. You knew you were not fully there, but you did not have the word for it. You did not have the voice that could call you out. This is where the story turns. This is where it stops being about a man who lived 2,000 years ago and starts being about what is happening in your life right now. The tomb is not a historical location. The tomb is the place where you have buried your own awareness. The burial cloth S are the beliefs that keep you bound. And the voice calling from outside, or the one that says, El Azar us, come out. That voice has been calling your name your entire life. Now here is something that should stop you completely. The name Lazarus itself means something. In Hebrew, Ele Azar. God has helped. The name carries the weight of divine assistance, but the irony of the story is that Lazarus is the only character in the narrative who does nothing. He is passive. He is silent. He is the one being acted upon, and that is intentional. Because the part of you that is asleep cannot wake itself. The sleeping self cannot decide to wake. It must be called. You have tried to wake yourself. You have read books. You have attended seminars. You have meditated. You have tried to force yourself into awareness. And for a moment, it worked. You felt a flicker, a crack of light. You thought you were waking up. But then the weight of the tomb pulled you back down. Because the self that tries to wake itself is still part of the sleep. The ego cannot liberate the ego. The false self cannot dismantle the false self. There must be a voice from outside. That voice is what the story calls Jesus. But the word Jesus is not a surname. It is a function. It is the part of consciousness that has never been asleep, the part that stands outside the tomb, the part that is fully awake and fully aware and fully present, the part that calls to the sleeping self and says, come out. You know this voice. It is the voice that has whispered to you in moments of clarity. In the middle of the night when you suddenly saw your life with perfect honesty, in a moment of silence when you realized you had been pretending, when you heard a piece of music that broke something open, when you looked into the eyes of another person and felt the walls between you dissolve. That was the voice of the one who stands outside the tomb, and every time you heard it, you had a choice. You could stay where you were, wrapped in the familiar darkness, or you could respond. Most of the time, you stayed, because the tomb is comfortable, the tomb is predictable. The tomb does not ask anything of you. The tomb is the life you have built around the absence of yourself. And leaving it means being born again, not in the theological sense, but in the experiential sense. It means walking out of everything you thought you knew and standing in a light that exposes every hidden corner. And that is terrifying. That is why so many people hear the voice and do not respond. That is why you yourself have heard it and turned away. Not because you are weak, because the sleep is powerful, because the tomb has a gravitational pull, because the burial cloth S feel like skin. This is a weight that no one carries alone. And this channel exists because the UNB ending happens together. If you have felt the pull of that voice and you want to keep walking out, not just intellectually, but with others who are also waking up. Subscribe, because this is not content you consume and forget. This is a map you return to. And the people who stay with this channel are the ones who are already standing at the threshold. Now I want you to test something. Look at the moment you just passed, the part about the voice you have been ignoring for years. What is the one area of your life where you know you have been pretending not to hear? Drop it in the comments. Not for me, for yourself. And aiming it is the first step of the UNB ending. This is the point where the conventional reading of the story fails completely. The conventional reading says, Lazarus was dead, Jesus raised him, everyone believed, end of story. But the story does not end. Lazarus walked out of the tomb still wrapped in burial cloth S. And Jesus said to the people standing there, in him. Let him go. That is the missing piece. That is the part that changes everything. Lazarus was awakened by the voice. But he could not free himself. He was still bound. He could see the light. He could breathe the air. But he could not walk. He could not move freely. He was awake inside the constraints of the old life. And Jesus did not remove the cloth, though himself. He told the community to do it, the people who had watched him sleep, the people who had more, ned him, the people who had given up hope. They were the ones who had to end him. You are Lazarus. You have heard the voice. Something in you has stirred. You know you are not dead. You are only sleeping, but you are still bound. Bound by the relationships that keep you small, bound by the work that drains you, bound by the beliefs that were never yours, bound by the shame, the guilt, the fear that has been woven around you for so long it feels like a second skin. And now you face a choice that most people never reach, not the choice to wake up. You have already been awakened. The choice is what to do with the cloth S. This is where the story becomes unbearable. This is where everything breaks open. Look at your own life. Look at the places where you are still bound, the relationships that keep you in the old story, the job that demands your presence but not your soul, the habits that run on ayat op ilat, the thoughts that circle the same tracks every day. These are the burial cloth S. They are not evil. They are not sin. They are simply the residue of a life lived in sleep, and they must be removed. But here's the cruelty of awakening. The voice does not remove them for you. The voice calls you out. The voice shows you the tomb. The voice brings you to the threshold. But the UNB ending is yours to participate in, and it requires help. It requires others. It requires a community of people who are also walking out of their own tombs, because you cannot UNB end yourself. The cloth S are wrapped too tightly. You cannot see where they begin and you end. You need hands that are not your own. You need eyes that can see the knots you cannot see. This is the structure of genuine transformation. It is not a private event. It is not a solo journey that happens in isolation. Every mystic who returned from the depths came back to speak. Every person who crossed the threshold came back to guide. The voice calls you out of the tomb. But the UNB ending happens in relationship. It happens in community. It happens when you let someone else see the places you have kept hidden. And this is where the story of Lazarus reveals its final layer, the one that has been waiting for you since the beginning. You have heard the name Lazarus your whole life. You have been told it was a story about a dead man who came back to life. But the original text never said that. The word egeiro means to awaken. The tomb was not a grave. It was a cave of sleep. The stone was not a seal of death. It was the weight of an unexam in life. The voice was not a command to a corpse. It was a call to someone who had forgotten they were alive. And you are Lazarus. You have been sleeping in a tomb of your own making. You have been wrapped in cloths of belief that no longer fit. You have been lying in the dark waiting for a voice you have already heard. The voice has been calling you every single day. In the moments of quiet, in the moments of unias, in the moments when something inside you whispered that there must be more. The question is not whether the voice is real. The question is whether you will respond. Think about that. The entire architecture of this story is designed to bring you to this single point, the crisis of response, the moment when you must decide whether to stay or to walk out. And if you are like most people, you already know which one you have been choosing. You have been staying. You have been rationalizing. You have been telling yourself that the tomb is not that bad, that the cloths are comfortable, that the stone is too heavy to move. But here is what the story does not tell you, and it is the most dangerous part of all. The story does not tell you that the stone was rolled away by someone else. It does not tell you that the voice was loud enough to penetrate the cave. It does not tell you that the cloths were loose-ended by hands that were not your own. It tells you that you are called. It tells you that you must come out, and it tells you that you must be unbound by others. But what it does not tell you, what it leaves for you to discover, is that the tomb is always open. The stone has already been rolled away. The voice has already spoken. The hands are already waiting. The only thing keeping you inside is the belief that you are dead, and that belief is the one thing you can choose to let go of. This is why the story of Lazarus has survived for 2,000 years. Not because it is a miracle story, not because it proves something about Jesus. It has survived because it is the most accurate description of the human condition ever written. Every person on this planet is either in the tomb, walking out, or trying to help someone else be end. There is no fourth option. Look at your life again. Look at the areas where you are still sleeping, the dreams you have abandoned, the truth you have avoided, the call you have ignored, the voice that has been calling you for years, but you have refused to answer because answering means leaving what you know. You know the feeling, the restlessness that never quite goes away, the vague sense that you are living someone else's life. The moment when you catch yourself going through the motions and wonder if this is all there is, that is the voice. That is the voice saying, Lazarus, come out. And you have been pretending not to hear it. You have been filling your life with noise to drown it out. You have been staying busy. You have been consuming. You have been performing. You have been doing everything except stopping long enough to realize that you are in a tomb and the door is open. But here is the truth that changes everything. The voice does not stop. It has never stopped. It will never stop, because the voice is not something outside you. The voice is the part of you that knows you are more than the life you are living. The voice is the part of you that never went to sleep. The voice is the part of you that has been waiting for you to remember. And this is the moment that cannot be undone. This is the threshold. You have been given the truth. You have seen the original language. You have understood that the story is about awakening, not resurrection. You have recognized that you are Lazarus. You have felt the uncomfortable familiarity of the tomb. You have sensed the weight of the burial cloths. And now you must decide. Not with your mind, not with your logic, not with your theology. Your mind will give you 100 reasons to stay. Your logic will tell you that it is not that simple. Your theology will try to fit this into a framework that does not contain it. But the decision is not made in the mind. The decision is made in the place where the voice speaks. The place that has already answered. The place that already knows what must be done. The decision is made when you stop pretending you did not hear. And this is the final confrontation. The one that cannot be avoided. The one that every story in the Bible is pointing toward. The one that every psychological insight is circling. The one that every spiritual tradition is trying to bring you to. The tomb is empty, not because of something that happened 2,000 years ago. The tomb is empty because you are not dead. You are sleeping, and the voice is calling you by name. What are you going to do about it? Because once you see it, you don't go back. The old reading of the story is gone. You cannot hear the name Lazarus without hearing your own name. You cannot read the words, come out, without feeling the pull. You cannot pretend that the story is about someone else. It is about you. It has always been about you, and now you know. The question that remains is not a question you can answer with your mouth. It is a question you answer with your life. Will you stay in the tomb, or will you walk out into the light wrapped in cloths that will take a lifetime to fully remove, but moving nonetheless? That is the only question that has ever mattered. And it is the question this story was written to ask. The voice has spoken. The stone is rolled away. The hands are waiting. Lazarus, come out. You heard it. That voice. It was not loud. It was not accompanied by thunder or earthquakes. It was a voice that cut through every layer of numbness you had built, every justification you had constructed, every reason you had given yourself for staying exactly where you were. And for a fraction of a second, but a fraction so small you almost missed it, something inside you stirred. Do not look away from that. That was not your imagination. That was the part of you that has been waiting to be called. Here's what most people never realize about this moment in the story. Lazarus did not walk out immediately. The text says he came out, but it does not say he moved quickly. Think about what that means. He was wrapped in cloth S. His feet were bound. His face was covered. Every movement required effort. Every step was a negotiation with his own limitations. This is the part of the story that the church never emphasizes. Because it is inconvenient. Because it suggests that awakening is not a single event, but a process that begins with a single decision. You want to know what real transformation looks like? It looks like a man bound in grave clothes, taking one step toward a light he cannot fully see. It looks like someone who knows they are still wrapped in their old patterns, still carrying the smell of the tomb, still stumbling forward, but moving nonetheless. That is where you are right now, right in that space between the calling and the walking. And here is what makes this moment sacred. The text says, Jesus commanded them to be in him. He did not do it himself. The community did it. The people who stood watching did it. Why? Because no one wakes up alone. Because the cloth S of the old self cannot be removed by the person wearing them. You cannot see the wrappings on your own face. You cannot untie the knots on your own feet. You need someone else to do it. This is where the spirituality industry has lied to you. It told you that awakening is a solitary journey, that you must find yourself alone, that the path is walked in isolation. That is a Western invention. That is modern individualism dressed up as mysticism. The original story says the exact opposite. The one who calls you is not the one who unbinds you. The community does that. You have been trying to unbound yourself. You have been reading books, watching videos, taking courses, all alone, trying to pull the cloth S off your own face. And it has not worked. Because it cannot work. You cannot see the ray peppings on your own eyes. This is why the church and the real church, not the institution, but the body of people who have also been called. This is why it exists. Not to give you rules, not to tell you what to believe, but to unbind the people who have answered the call. And if you do not have that community, you need to find it, not a building, not a program, not a brand. A group of people who have also heard the voice, who know what it means to be wrapped in grave clothes, who are willing to stand beside you and pull the cloth as away, one at a time. That is not religion, that is survival. Now watch what happens next. Because the story does not end with Lazarus walking out. It does not end with him being unbound. It continues. And what happens next is the most overlooked part of the entire narrative. After Lazarus was raised, after he was unbound, after he sat down and ate with Jesus, something strange occurred. The religious leaders began to plot. Not against Jesus this time, against Lazarus. Look at the text. John 12:10 says, "The chief priests consulted that they might put Lazarus also to death." Think about that. The man who was raised from the dead, the living proof of something miraculous, had become a target. Why? Because his existence was a problem. Because he could not be explained away. Because every time someone looked at him, they had to confront the fact that something had happened that their system could not contain. Here is the psychological truth hiding in that detail. When you wake up, when you truly wake up, you become a problem for the systems that depend on you staying asleep. Your family, your job, your church, your social circle, these systems were built around the sleeping version of you. They made agreements with that version. They built expectations around that version. And when that version dies, the systems notice. You will feel this. You are probably feeling it already. The people who love the sleeping, you will not celebrate the waking you. They will try to put you back in the tomb, not out of malice, out of comfort. The sleeping you was predictable. The sleeping you did not disrupt anything. The sleeping you fit into the story they had written. But you do not fit anymore. That is not a sign that you are wrong. That is a sign that you are alive. Lazarus lived the rest of his life as a marked man. There are legends in the Eastern Orthodox tradition that he was forced to flee, that he became a bishop in Cyprus, that he never returned to the life he had before. The tomb changed everything, not because he was different in his essence, but because he had seen something that could not be unseen. And here's where the synthesis must land, because this is the part that will either transform you or make you close this video and never return. The obvious answer was that Jesus raised a dead man. That answer is true. It is theologically valid. It is historically attested. It is what the church has taught for 2,000 years. The inversion was that the story is actually about sleep, not death. That the Greek word egeiro means to awaken, not to resurrect. That the story is happening inside you right now, that you are the one in the tomb, that you have been sleeping while believing you were awake. Both are true. At the same time, the paradox is not a problem to be solved. It is a door to be walked through. The surface story teaches you that Jesus has power over death. The deeper story teaches you that you are not dead. You are asleep. And the synthesis of these two truths is this: the one who calls you has authority over both death and sleep. And the difference between them matters less than you think, because both require the same thing, a voice that penetrates the silence. You have been told that you need to be saved from death. What if what you actually need is to be awakened from sleep? What if salvation is not about escaping the grave, but about becoming aware that you were never meant to be in it? Think about the implications of that. If the problem is death, you need a rescue. You need something external to save you. You are passive. You wait. You hope. That is the religion you were taught. But if the problem is sleep, the solution is entirely different. A sleeping person can be awoken. They already have life in them. They do not need a second life. They need to be shaken. They need a voice that cuts through the dream. And you already have that voice. It is not outside you. It is the part of you that kept watching this video, the part that felt something stir when you heard the words, Lazarus, come out. That stirring is the voice. It has always been there. You have just been trained to ignore it. This is the deepest layer of the story. The one who called Lazarus from the tomb is the same one who has been calling you your entire life. Every moment of dissatisfaction, every feeling that there must be more, every quiet whisper in the middle of the night that something was wrong. That was the voice, standing at the mouth of your tomb, speaking your name. And you have been pretending you did not hear it. Stop pretending. You heard it when you were 23 and realized you had chosen a life you did not want. You heard it when you walked out of a church building and knew you would never go back. You heard it when you looked at a relationship that had been dead for years and felt the weight of staying. You heard it every single time you told yourself, Tom Oro, and felt the lie in your own mouth. That was not your conscience. That was not psychology. That was the same voice that stood at the tomb of Lazarus, and it is still speaking. So now you have to decide, not whether you believe the story, not whether you accept the theology, not whether you agree with this interpretation. You have to decide whether you will walk out of the tomb you have been living in. The stone is rolled away. It has always been rolled away. The voice has spoken. It has always been speaking. The only thing that has kept you inside is your own refusal to move. And you know why you have refused. Because walking out means leaving behind the grave clothes that have become comfortable. Because the darkness has become familiar. Because you have built a life around the silence, and you are afraid of what will happen when you step into the light. But here is what Lazarus knew, and what you must know now. The light you are afraid of is the same light that has been waiting for you since before you were born. It is not harsh. It is not judgment all. It is the light of a love that called you into existence and has never stopped calling you back to yourself. That love is not a feeling. It is a force. It is the ground beneath every awakening. It is the thing that made Lazarus get up when he had every reason to stay down. And it is the thing that is making you consider right now, in this moment, what it would mean to finally leave the tomb. You do not have to have everything figured out. Lazarus did not. He came out wrapped in cloth S. He came out stumbling. He came out blinking in a light he had not seen in 4 days. He came out still smelling of the grave, but he came out. That is all that is required of you. One step, one decision. One moment where you stop pretending that the T-Ohm is safe. One moment where you stop missed aching sleep for death and death for peace. You have been in there long enough, longer than 3 days, longer than you care to admit. So here is the question that the story of Lazarus has been waiting to ask you across 2,000 years, across every translation, every sermon, every misreading that turned it into a spectacle instead of a mirror. Will you come out? Not when you are ready. Not when the stone is rolled away for you. Not when you have untangled your own grave clothes. right now, while you are still wrapped, while you are still blinking, while the voice is still calling your name. Because here is what nobody tells you about the resurrection of Lazarus. The stone was already rolled away when Jesus arrived. Read the text again, John 11:41. They took away the stone, not Jesus, not an angel. They did it. The very people who said, "Lord, by this time there is a Saint Inch. He has been dead 4 days." The ones who doubted, the ones who smelled the decay, they are the ones who moved the stone, and that means something that should stop you cold. The tomb was never sealed from the outside. It was sealed from the inside. The stone that kept Lazarus in the dark was not placed there by God. It was not placed there by fate. It was placed there by the same thing that keeps you in yours. The belief that you are dead. The belief that there is no point. The belief that you have been in the dark so long that light would burn. The belief that your story is over, that your best days are behind you, that the person you used to be is gone, and the person you are now is not worth saving. That is the stone. And here's the part that changes everything. The stone was already moved before Jesus spoke. The voice that called Lazarus out did not move the stone. The voice called after the stone was gone, which means that the thing keeping you in the tomb is not the voice you are waiting to hear. It is the stone you have not yet allowed anyone to touch. You have been waiting for God to speak before you move, and the story is telling you that you have it backwards. Move the stone. Let the air in. Let the light hit the dark places. Let the Saint Inch of what has been rotting inside you be exposed. And then you will hear the voice that has been calling you all along. This is the inversion that the church has never preached. You are not waiting for God. God is waiting for you, not to be perfect, not to have your grave clothes off, not to have it all figured out, just to let someone help you roll away the stone, and you know who that someone is. You know exactly who in your life has been standing outside your tomb, waiting for you to say yes, waiting for you to stop insisting that you are fine, waiting for you to admit that you have been asleep for years. That person is the love that the story is really about. Not a magic word that wakes the dead, but a presence that stays, a presence that we eps at the tomb, a presence that does not leave when the smell gets bad, a presence that says, "I am not here to judge you for being in there, I am here to call you out." That presence has been with you the whole time. You have felt it, in the quiet moments, in the middle of the night when something stirs and you do not know what to call it, in the sudden stillness when the noise of your life drops away and you hear something underneath. That is the voice. It has been calling your name since before you got into the tomb. It called you in, it sustained you in the dark, and it is calling you out now. Here is the final sentence, the one I promised at the beginning. The key that unlocks the whole story. Lazarus was not resurrected. He was awakened. He did not come back from the dead. He came back from sleeping. He came back from the numbness, the dissociation, the years of going through the motions while something inside him lay wrapped in cloths in a dark room that smelled like an ending. And you were not dead either. You were sleeping. And once you see it, you don't go back. This is the final call. The voice does not grow louder as you get closer to the tomb. It grows quieter. So if you heard anything in this video that stirred you, do not let this moment dissolve into the noise of your day. Subscribe now while the stone is still rolled away in your mind. Because the next video will pull another thread, another story you thought you knew, another word you never looked up, another door you did not know was open. And if you are not subscribed, you will miss the moment it opens. Now I want you to leave one word in the comments, one word that sums up what you are walking away from the tomb with. Was it akening? Was it unbind? Was it stone? Was it simply your own name? Leave it, and if you are ready, let that word be the first step you take out of the dark.